Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Be seated. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father is speaking through you. So as we have heard today, as we commemorate and celebrate the conversion of St. Paul through the passage from Acts and in the commemoration paragraph, right, we see that Paul, in this well-known story, right, one of the fiercest of the persecutors, one of the most ardent enemies of the church, ends up becoming one of the most influential spreaders and exponents of the gospel. It's such an amazing twist of events. But when we look at the readings for today, it's really interesting to see in the way that Saul makes his case to King Agrippa, the way that he understood it and experienced that conversion is where Christ tells him, I will rescue you and your people from the Gentiles, that they may turn from darkness to light and from Satan to the power of God. One way I think this is really interesting because of this is a healing sort of Eucharist that we focus on. It makes me think of reconciliation, right? And it's something we talk about a lot as Christians. And the reason I think this is interesting here is because God doesn't say, I will save your people from the Gentiles by getting rid of the Gentiles, obliterating the Gentiles. And likewise in Matthew 2, we see, I'm sending you as sheep before wolves. But God doesn't say, Jesus doesn't say, I'm going to get rid of all the wolves, or not let you fall into the wolves' hands. God has something different in mind for what rescue looks like. And I think this is the heart of the redemption Christian message. Where God did not save Jesus from death. God went into death so that death would lose its power and end up becoming the gateway to life. And here too, God finds Saul and takes him in his oppression of the church. And perhaps, right, the church was praying that it would stop. Maybe God could have incapacitated Saul. God could have simply, had him die an early death or struck him down. But instead, God did one better, recruiting Saul into Paul to God's purposes. And perhaps you're going to see this in the gospel story. It wouldn't be such that God gets rid of the wolves, but that God turns all the wolves into sheep, or recruits the wolves to work for God's kingdom. And I think when we think about healing in all its forms, right, whether it's interpersonal, whether it's an illness, whether it's our grief, in the long stretch of redemption, right, when we see what happens to Jesus, when we see what happens to Paul, it's not necessarily the case the way God works to simply get rid of things. But God takes those things that are truly bad in their own right. Right? It's not a good thing in the end that Paul persecuted the church. Like Paul, when he was Saul, killed a ton of people. There's no silver lining. It's something better than silver lining. God can take every part of our experience, even the worst parts that don't have any redemptive quality on our own. And we don't have to try to look for a redemptive quality in it. But we can trust that God will somehow, in some way, turn it into the better. As a way of mocking the darkness, a way of showing that it has real power. And I know this is a really hard thing to think about when you're actually in the midst of suffering, of struggle, of illness. I for sure know that. But it is a great mystery. And the way we think of mystery as Christians, or the way people back then thought of mystery, just doesn't mean, when we say, oh, it's a mystery about this matter or that. It's not that we don't know it. Mysteries can be known. They just can't be fully comprehended the way we might know a mathematical fact, or how many leaves a tree has by counting. Right? A mystery is something that we can only know when we're in it, and we can only know through encounter. and we might not know where it will lead. I think that in many ways is how the Christian life is when it comes to healing and our relationship with God. We may not hear God's voice in time. We may not be sure what we will do. In many ways, there's nothing that we really feel that we can do. And that's okay. It can sometimes only be enough to sit and to listen for God and to hold and to trust that in some way God will make things right. Will bring something even greater out of what is objectively terrible. And in that, it is okay to not feel held. It is okay to feel that God is being silent. It doesn't make you any less faithful. The faith is in the sense of hoping, weirdly against hope. And even the anger that the hope hasn't arrived is itself a testament to that hope. So as we think about the conversion of Paul and the radical transformation that we see, let us hold in our minds the myriad of ways that we can enter into this mystery of God's redemptive love and reconciliation in the world and healing. And keep in mind that while we may not know what it looks like right now, in this moment, or even tomorrow or the next year, that God holds it, and that we can bring all our burdens to Him.